Everyone, welcome to CraftQuest on Call. I'm Ryan Ireland, and this is a live Q&A show where we answer questions about Craft CMS, modern web development, sometimes miscellaneous things, and we all work together here via the chat and also with my esteemed co-host Andrew Welch. Hello, Andrew. How are you doing today?
Hello, Mr. Ryan. I'm feeling especially shiny today. How about yourself?
you're looking dull and not shiny, so that's good.
You don't just call someone dull, Ryan. That's
that's
very rude.
that wasn't the compliment that I thought it was going to be. So I was just letting everyone know that CraftQuest on Call, we switched the time. If you're watching this live, then you probably know, or you just stumbled upon it. But it's still the first and third Thursday of the month, but we changed it to 12 noon Eastern time in the US. And so that's also going to, it's great because it's just earlier for everybody, maybe over lunch. And then I'm also not here at my office until 9 o'clock at night. But also, some of our friends in Europe can join us, which I think is cool. I think we lose the Australians, though, because it would be like middle of the night for them, I think. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Or maybe, yeah, I think so. I forget what it was when Josh joined us last time. But anyway, if you want to have your question answered live on the air, you can jump into the chat. If you go to craftquest.io/live streams, there's the embedded YouTube chat there. If you can also watch us live on YouTube. We're up on Periscope on Twitter and also on Twitch, all at the same time. But the chat that we look at is in YouTube, so check that out. You can also go to craftquest.io/on-call, and there's a beautiful form there that you can fill out, and that gets dropped into a spreadsheet that we look at before the show when we're queuing up our questions. And it's been kind of light on the submitted questions, so I encourage everyone to check that out. All right, Andrew. So since our last live stream, we've actually had quite a few things happen that I want to just touch on briefly before we jump into questions. Sound good?
I'm ready to do whatever you want, Ryan. I am here at your request, at your fiat. You are my leader, my siege.
Okay.
I will fall on my sword for you, whatever you need.
You don't talk like that offline. All you do is berate me. So since our last live stream, Craft 3.6 came out. So, I mean, we've talked about Craft 3.6 several times on the live stream since it was in RC for quite a while. And I think we've actually covered everything. I wasn't going to cover it really much because last time we covered the responsive live preview viewports in the last live stream. Yep. I think we've covered the user impersonation URLs early on. And then Composer 2, we've covered a lot. This is just Composer 2 kind of packaged into Craft is what they're highlighting here. But so if you haven't upgraded, check that out. I have a video on CraftQuest about the thing you have to look out for on your platform requirement for PHP in your composer.json file. So you can check that out as well. And there's also a link to an article that Andrew has about updating Craft CMS without headaches. Check that out because he has a section on updating to Craft 3.6. Also, yesterday, Pixel and Tonic released a beta of Nitro 2. And this is their local development tool that they released last year. I want to say it was I feel like I was working at home at that point. Like I wasn't in my office. It was like at the point in the pandemic where I was working at home. So I want to say that was like around the spring, something like that when that came out. And in beta. So they just released version 2 in beta right now for Mac OS. I believe the Windows version is coming. From what I understand, they're just working through some issues to make sure that is stable enough for a beta release. But you can get it going on Mac OS and Linux if you want to check that out. So the big changes here are, instead of having Nitro be built on top of multipass for that like virtualization layer, it's actually using Docker. So if you already have Docker Desktop installed on your machine, then it actually just takes a few minutes to get Nitro up and running. So I think this is really cool. I've been playing with it over the last 24 hours and been really impressed with what they were able to pull off. It fixes a lot of things that I didn't like about Nitro 1, like the lack of SSL support. I like to run secure sites like in all environments, so I'm always aware of if there's any issues. So it has that all built in. Multi-containers for for PHP, Nginx. We talked about this with the Docker setup that you have, Andrew, so it's kind of similar to that. And I think it's really like approachable and accessible to a lot of people that are interested in using it. I created a lesson just has like a first look on Nitro 2 that you can check out, and it's not really meant to be a full-on tutorial. Just I quickly install it, show how to add a site, and go over some of the main features. So I've been digging it, and you should check it out. If you're on the Mac or Linux, you can install it today. Any thoughts on Nitro 2?
I have a question.
Andrew? Yeah.
I have many thoughts, but first I have a question.
Okay.
So why is it that you like to run sites locally in SSL? You say to catch problems, but what problems are those? Like what are we trying to do? Oh,
well, I always like to make sure that like if I'm pulling in an external asset or something like that, that there's never an issue, so that everything is pulled in securely. It's really, and also in general, I like to make sure that my local development environment, staging, and production are as in line and in sync as possible. It's kind of and it's the same reason I like to use host names, because in local development, which Nitro also allows you lots of tools allow you, like Valet, things like that, I just like to have the name host everywhere so I can link things together.
Yeah, so you're talking about mixed content issues, right? So
right.
You're talking about when Chrome will throw an error, or whatever your browser is will throw an error and say, mixed content, you're running secure, you can't load this insecure thing. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a valid reason. Definitely the reasons you listed are valid. There are a couple of reasons why you might sometimes not want to do that. The main one is just speed.
That's true.
Every SSL connection is a little bit slower than a non-SSL connection. Now, after the initial connection is done, there's a lot less overhead, so it's not a big deal. But I agree with you in general. I think it's probably better to just have your local environment match your production as much as you can.
Yep. And ideally, I've told you this, I want to get to the point where the Docker containers that I'm running locally are the ones that are running on the server too, right? That's for me.
That's what we all want. We want Nitro deploy. Let's just Jason, if you're watching this, Jason, by tomorrow, if you could have Nitro deploy working so that, you're working in local dev, and when everything works the way you want it, you just type Nitro deploy and it just magically appears on your production. I would appreciate if you would get that in there. Just slide it right in there real quick. Okay?
So if you type Nitro, right, you get all these commands.
Type Nitro deploy.
It'd be nice to
maybe it's in there. Maybe it's in there.
Deploy production.
Yeah, maybe it's in there. Oh, you didn't enable experimental features. Enable experimental features, and it'll probably work.
That's what we want. That's what we're after. So I always know what's going on.
I've got some thoughts on Nitro 2. I played around with the original Nitro. I ended up not using it because it didn't seem like a big gain for me. I was using, still am using actually, Homestead for plugin development, just because I have that environment all set up, and it's a junk environment. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's for plugin development, And then I have embraced Docker for everything else. And eventually I'm going to move my plugin development there as well. Just haven't gotten around to it yet. But it just, the original Nitro, it just seemed to me that it was kind of like Homestead. It was kind of monolithic, even though it was supposed to be lighter. It still was a monolithic VM with stuff running inside it. So to me, it wasn't that different from Homestead that I already had working and already had a big community around it. And then I found true love, Ryan. I found true love at the end of Docker Lane. So I've been using that. So I'm happy. Like I wished that the original Nitro was a Docker-based environment, especially because Jason is a Docker ninja, you know? I was kind of hoping that was what it was going to be. So I'm glad that they're embracing Docker now for this version. I have not played with it, so any opinions that I would have on it are completely ignorant. And
but you watched my video though, right?
So I am completely ignorant on. No, yes, I watched your video.
Let me pull the text where you said it was a good video. Hang on 1 second. There it is. Where is it?
You can fake text. You know that, right? Like people are doing that all the time.
Let's see.
People are faking texts and tweets and posting them on Twitter and trying to cancel people. You know that's a thing, right?
No, that's I said at least one of us has to be prepared. Oh wait, that was a different conversation about the live stream. Yeah. Anyway, so hey, in the chat, Ben asked any preferences for the local host names .test, .local, etc. So I like up to this point, I've used .test. So I've used Valet mostly. On my production iMac, which is what I stream off of here, my Valet installation got hosed. And I believe I texted you, Andrew, that I was so mad about it that I didn't even want to valet my car anymore. So honestly, and I've been working with you because I've been trying to just get away from using Valet because it's just a little bit too fragile for me. So I've been using .test. Out of the box, Nitro uses .nitro, but you can change that. So if you look at I forget the command, or maybe you have to update the YAML file, but you can customize it in Nitro, whatever they use by default.
The only thing I would say to Ben is do not use .local. I know some people like to use that, but that is also what Apple uses for Rendezvous, for its kind of little magic local networking kind of scheme thingy. So I wouldn't use that unless you're planning on integrating that with Rendezvous for the local networking.
And I used to use .dev for everything before that became an actual like qualified.
Until Google decided to cash in on it. You know?
Yeah. And now actually I have like domains with .dev, so it's kind of nice.
I bought a bunch of those and I have done nothing with any of them.
Yeah, Andrea says Nitro 2 is a huge improvement, can finally replace Homestead. I saw Andrea was enjoying Nitro, so that's cool. Danny asks, how is the performance of sites in Nitro 2 compared to Valet? I haven't noticed anything, and I mean it just came out yesterday, so I haven't really been able to put hours in of development time on it, but I haven't noticed anything. And one of the reasons I like Valet and I had used it is because it was so easy and fast to use. I could customize my my host names. I could easily generate a self-signed certificate for everything. It was easy. I was just really fast at managing stuff. But the performance was always good. I haven't noticed anything slow. I mean, I assume there's if there's like Docker overhead, I assume that's there, but I haven't noticed anything. I mean, you don't really notice anything in your Docker setup, do you, Andrew? Other than just
I don't notice any overhead. But my real issue with talking about local dev performance is I know, and I'm not talking about Danny. I'm talking about other people that I know. They're like, oh, I have to have a response time of 300 milliseconds, or I just can't use it. Like it's unusable, you know. And I don't agree with that philosophy on stuff because I think, especially if you're using a modern tooling setup where you will have hot module replacement, it's so much better than it just improves the experience so much. and it will reload. As long as it reloads in a second or so, it's going to be absolutely fine for what you're doing. And there are different kinds of speed and different kinds of performance. So, what is your speed like when you're banging your head into your monitor trying to get stupid brew to install the right version of PHP and link it up to all the correct sites? You know what I mean? Like, where's your performance now, man? Where's your performance now? Yeah. But you're not unique, right? I mean, that happens to everybody. And it's not necessarily a flaw with Valet. It's a local dev setup. It's fragile, and you can easily bork it.
Yeah.
And it's just never fun to try and type the magic brew incantations to get your crap working again. You do an OS upgrade, and oh God, I don't even want to do the OS upgrade because I don't want to have to reinstall all the crap that I need for local development.
That's right.
It's the way some people used to treat servers, is like, don't touch it, don't reboot it, don't install any updates. We don't want it to break, And
now they're disposable.
And yeah, but you really want it to be the opposite of that. You want it to be to the point where you just don't care. You just throw it away, and because you can recreate it because you have tooling that will just spin it up and do it.
Yep.
So I would just say that it is going to be slower than Valet. If you have anything that has any level of abstraction, it's going to be slower, right? To some extent or another. Is it going to matter? I don't think so. I mean, I don't notice any overhead at all with my Docker setup. And I saw you running your Nitro setup, and everything seems really quite zippy to me,
Yep. Yeah, I don't notice anything either. All right, let's jump into our first question. What do you think?
Hold on. We're not done. We're not done, Ryan. The other thing is with the M1 Macs that are coming out. So Docker has had the interesting thing about Docker is the selling point of it is that it's containerized, right? It's smaller than a VM. It's lighter weight than a VM. The ironic thing is on a Mac, because there's no native support for Docker containers or containerization, you are running like a little tiny Linux VM essentially. And so it's a little bit ironic there. So the performance has suffered a little bit because of that. With the new M1 Macs that have come out, Apple has actually written a virtualization layer that Docker is hooking into to do its thing. And at the, what's the right word? At the nagging of Patrick, my esteemed devmode.fm host, he was complaining that my free Docker images were not multi-architecture. It's unbelievable. And so I built them all as multi-architecture now. So he can just pull them down and they'll be native on the M1. He says the M1 Macs are incredibly fast running Docker, and it may very well be due to this virtualization layer that Apple has built in that Docker is now leveraging, which is really nice. And it's really nice that there is this thing that exists, and its sole job, the only thing it needs to do and do well, is virtualize these little services that you need. And if you have never used Docker before, and you start using something like DDEV or Nitro or whatever, you're going to see the power of just being able to spin up these containers. You can be like, I want to use PHP 8 now. Just boom, up, down, boom, away we go. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think the future is going to get better too, with the M1 Macs and the performance of Docker. But I can honestly say I have not had performance issues with Docker at all. The only time that Docker can end up being slow is when you're building your own images from scratch. And then it's a one-time thing that building the image is slow. With Nitro, all of the images are pre-built. So you don't even have to worry about that. You just suck them down and away you go.
So if anyone in the chat, if you've used Nitro already, if you've given it a shot, drop your thoughts in, and we'll take a look as we're going through the questions. But this is CraftQuest on call, Andrew, so I do want to make sure we get to some questions.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if it's CraftQuest on call, how come no one's calling us? Shouldn't we have like a live caller line?
We should. I would have to hire a screener, though. Yeah.
You're worried about that?
Well, I mean... All right, so we're going to jump into some Stack Exchange stuff. There's actually some interesting questions in there that I think we can expound on.
I'm looking at us, man. I look pink and you look green. We got to work on this color correction thing. What's going on?
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have cheaped out on your displays.
Yeah,
so
I guess.
Multiple structures sharing the same entries. So the person asks, Cinema Mike said, I'm working on a site that is currently one structure called projects that organizes entries for each specific project. So I assume like a top level for the project and then some entries nested under. Of course, in the admin, he can reorder these manually. So far, so good. But now I was wondering if I could have two different structures, one for feature projects on the home page, and then another one for the project index that he can reorder them manually, but differently than each other. And he's asking if that makes sense. Like, can different structures share the same content? So
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so they can't. Because structure is it's a type of section. So it like a channel or structure or single. So the entries that you store in that are going to be owned by that type. However, to me, the reason I chose this, not because it was just easy to say, no, you can't do that, because I would actually step back and say, like, draw out in like a notebook or something, like what am I trying to achieve? And then maybe the structure actually isn't the right solution. Or like if you wanted, what did he say? Featured projects. So, I mean, that could be a tag or it could be a category that you could then add to those feature projects. And then you could just, in a element query, you could just select the ones that have that tag or have that category and display those. And then you can also
I had another idea.
Go ahead.
No, I was sorry about that. I thought you were done with your thought. I had a similar approach. Something I've done before is on the homepage itself, you have a entries button, which is a relations, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can just pick whatever things out of that structure that you want to have featured. And you can actually drag those around and reorder those. So you can change the order of them. You can't change the hierarchy of them.
Right.
But you can just,
do you mean like
the nice thing about that. No, on the entries index page, you have an entries field that points to this structure of projects. And he can just pick and choose which one should be featured, right? So you can just pick 5 different projects and you can actually drag them in the little relations thing to change the order that they're going to appear, and you're done.
Yeah. So maybe instead of having structures do something that they're not built to do, like Andrew said, use another field to just basically pull in those, an entries field. You can reorder them. You could use a global as well to do it. It's kind of but like on the home, like say the home page is a single. Maybe this is what you're getting at. Is that field would then have like projects. There'd be a projects field, which would be an entries field, and then you could just pull in those and just reorder them. So there's always different ways of getting at the content. But if you really need them stored as a structure, then store them as a structure and then work in a different way to get them to be presented the way you want. You
By the way, Ryan, I'm flattered, but you've got the camera on me while you're talking. I'm flattered.
Oh, sorry.
But
you might.
I don't care.
I'm the director and the switcher.
I was going to try to start like mouthing to try and make it look like I was saying the words.
But. So, but you probably need to. You might realize that the structure isn't the right section type for this.
Well, structure is right for the project, but then look, if what we want. So we've got an organization of projects that have some kind of hierarchical organization. That's great. Okay, those are in a structure. Okay. Then we want some subset of that to appear somewhere else that needs to be manually curated. Perfect. An entries field called featured projects that lets you pick the projects and lets you change the order of them. You're done. And the nice thing about that is if you ever want the projects to appear somewhere else, you could have another field that you could just put there and they can just do whatever they want.
Right.
And it'll work with localization.
The advantage is you're not having to go into the individual entries to feature them. You can feature them in sort of abstracted layer rather than going into it. And that's kind of, did we talk about this last time? Like where you should, oh no, it was another conversation I was having. Like where you're creating relationships between things. And I would, so anyway, but that would be my recommendation.
No, I get what you're saying. Your content authors, when they go in, they're not going to expect to have to go to the projects and, thumb through them and figure out what's featured and what's not.
Right.
they're going to want to go to the homepage and figure out what's there.
Right. Exactly. All right. So I'll share my our suggestions with Cinema Mike, and I'm actually going to reload because this morning, no one's commented. We had it last time where someone had given an answer in between me pulling it up and going live.
And then we just read the answer, right?
Well, it was the same thing I would have
that we did work.
But great live stream. Okay, here's the next one from Jtrix. Jtrix says, at random times, local sites don't allow me to log into the admin with certain browsers. Currently, the person cannot log into a site using Chrome, but can using Firefox, and vice versa. The error in the console, browser console, is failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 400 bad request. Tried some other things. It seems random when it happens. Jtrix says I can log in fine and then go away from my PC for a few minutes, come back, and then have the log screen and not able to log in again. What do you think is going on here, Andrew? Any ideas?
Not really. I mean, it's going to be some kind of a DevOps problem. It's unlikely to be a craft problem. It could potentially be, depending. But what I'm unclear about is whether this is in local development. Is this a production site? Is it a load balance site? Like, could we possibly be looking at issues from that?
Yeah, so it's local only.
Okay.
So my first follow-up question would be,
what's he using then? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then from there, we can start to understand that maybe there's some issues.
And then this is where he says, oh, I'm just running Apache. It's like a custom Apache setup that I have locally. And then this is another reason why it's a great idea, even if you kind of know what you're doing, to set up your own local hosting environment, to use a tool, is that someone can help you. Whereas if you're using something that's 100% bespoke and you have a problem like this, who knows? You know, we would have to dig into your server setup to really know.
Yeah, which you always enjoy doing, I know.
I don't mind. I mean, it's not a big deal. But honestly, this would be, let's say this was a support ticket that came my way. Mm-hmm. This would be one of those support tickets where I would come up with a whole bunch of questions that I would ask them so that I would actually be able to hopefully have enough information to answer the question. And this is not a knock on the person who's asking the question, because a lot of times, if you don't, let's say that your domain is not DevOps, you don't really know DevOps that well. Well, how are you going to know what it would be important to relate to someone that does know it?
Right. Yeah, no, totally.
So, yeah.
Yep, I think that's good. And follow-up questions are to help get clarification so someone can help you. You'll see that a lot in Stack Exchange as comments to a question rather than an answer, just to get some more information. And that's what good answerers do. You see them all the time on Stack Exchange doing just that. All right. So we don't have an answer for that one. So we're one for one.
Yeah, we do.
We don't.
I gave you a perfectly acceptable answer. I said, I don't know.
We don't have one that solves this problem.
According to some people that I read on the internet today, saying I don't know is brave. So I'm just going to be brave and say I don't know.
Okay.
No, but I'm being serious. I honestly, I wouldn't know where to start without gathering more information on it.
Right. All right. Next question. So Lawrence asks how to receive an email notification when an error or bad request happens. So is it possible to receive notification via email if there's a bad request issue in Craft? Looks like they have a problem with their contact forms were not working due to a CSRF token name changing. There's no warnings. Instead, potential customers would see a bad request message, but we had no idea for days. So that's definitely alarming when you don't know that your contact form is working. In fact, I've had this happen where a client project I was working on, the contact form did break, and fortunately, it was the email sending part. It wasn't actually the capturing, and we were capturing in the database. But for people that are working based on like email, like contact form as like a lead gen tool, I know it's very lingo, like lead generation tool, then it can be disconcerting if the contact form starts working. So I get that. But in general, like, what are some approaches for being alerted to problems in Craft? Like when people get errors. I mean, this is a solved problem. Like there's all sorts of tools out there for being alerted. Andrew, what would be like your first take on how you would approach this?
Well, there are two things that I would probably do. One is I would sign them up for Sentry or Bugsnag or Paper Trail or any number of these services. And what they'll do is whenever there's an error, and you can specify, like, I don't care about warnings, I only want errors, you'll automatically get an email with a little report and a dump of the relevant stuff, and away you go. It's pretty easy to set it up with a custom logger, so it will go to Sentry, and there also are some plugins, yep, as you're showing there, that will hook up to it.
Yeah.
It's not free. Sentry, Bugsnag, and Paper Trail, they all have free tiers, which may or may not end up being enough for you.
They do, and they also have what are called alerts, so you can set like email alerts or other kind of alerts based on whatever the issue is, or the problem is, and you can also do it. This, I don't really have this set up, but you can do it by environment as well. Obviously, production is the one where you would want to get a text message if it was something critical. And there are quite a few Sentry plugins. In the answer, actually, I saw that someone showed how to do it in a module as well.
Yeah, I wrote a whole blog post. I know it's going to shock you, but I wrote a whole blog post on using custom loggers. Okay, and showing people how you can hook it up to Monolog, which can then go to any of these services.
There we are.
Yeah.
Of course, a logger.
But if that's isn't that a great lumberjack picture? But if that's too much for you, if you're not specializing in PHP development, you could outsource someone to do this for you, or actually, I don't know. I mean, as long as you have some coding experience, I think you probably could hook up your own custom logger. Yeah. But there are plugins that will just do it for you. The other half, so that covers the how do I get notified when someone else has an error problem, right? The other thing that I would recommend, depending on how important this is to you, is writing your own tests. So you can write an acceptance test that when you push changes to, this is assuming a number of things. This is assuming that you have a continuous integration pipeline, a CI pipeline that you push your code to. But what you can do is you can have a test that runs every time you are about to deploy code to production. It will run a suite of tests, including something that will actually test the contact form using headless Chrome, making sure it can actually input something and get a result, and then email actually comes through. You can use a mailer on that end to capture that. And if it's super critical, I would definitely do that, because then you catch the error before anyone experiences it. You catch the error before it even goes into production. It's all a matter of how critical it is to you. And maybe it's not that big of a deal, It depends.
Yeah, set up both. Because sometimes
depending. If it's like a lower budget site, it doesn't make any money to start, it doesn't make any, well, it also doesn't make any money, but it doesn't make any sense to start writing like a rigorous test suite that you're going to blow through more than half your budget just on that. It depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, but there's ways of, there's some really nice testing tools out there. Of course, there's the Codeception support that Craft has. I've also used, what's the other one? Oh man, there's a really nice set of tools too, like with a client application for running all the tests. So you don't have to do all of the create all the connections.
I know the one you're talking about, because I've used it. Starts with a C. I've used it. Oh, it starts with that. Sorry, Selenium. Yeah. No, it does start with a C. Cypress.
Thank you. Yes, Cypress.
That I've used. Yeah.
Yep, Cypress is the one I was thinking about. I always get Cypress and Sentry mixed up. One for logging, one for testing.
Yeah. Well, there's
yeah.
Cypress and there's Selenium. They're both testing frameworks.
Yep. So Cypress is it's a really nice testing tool.
But see, this requires a certain level, Ryan, because this requires that you have some kind of CI going on to begin with, right? If you're going to have tests run every time you push, you've got to have some kind of a CI solution running, right? Yeah.
Right, but yeah, that's true. That's true.
If you made a site for the local ballet
students, just run them before each, before a developer. Yeah. It depends how big the operation. If it's just a single person, you could just run your tests.
That's true.
Before you.
That's true. You could just run the test locally. I misspoke. You don't have to do it as part of a CI process. You can just manually run the tests. But here's what ends up happening, though, Ryan, is people just forget to run the tests. You know, or they're just like, oh, that change would never affect anything.
Yeah, I don't have time. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, I don't know. I sort of feel like if you're going to do it, it should be part of a CI process, really, because it's the times that my tests have caught errors, I would not have been running it manually. It's just something I just wouldn't expect caused an issue.
Right. All right, Andrew. Well, we have a couple more questions we can get to, but I want to break from the question answering.
Whew.
And
starting to feel the pressure.
Let's have a teaching moment. Want to have a teaching moment?
What are you going to teach me?
Oh no, you're going to teach actually.
Oh God! All right.
So this came up.
What am I teaching you?
This came up somewhere. I don't know, and I saw you mentioned it in the chat with to Andrea. About the difference between running ./craft versus PHP craft.
All right. You want to bring up do you have a local host where you can bring up a shell and we can do it? People can look at it?
Let's see. I think so.
Are you prepared, Ryan?
Well, I mean, let's see. Let me see if I'm. Hang on one second. I don't think I have Nitro running, so let me run Nitro start.
It's gonna be a trial by fire for the Nitro beta.
So
and you can do Nitro SSH, right, to get in there.
Yeah, I can SSH in. I don't know if the site is working, but let me see. PHP craft.
Just that. Just type that.
Oh yeah, I can just type that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Boom.
And you can do it with Nitro. I can just do Nitro craft as well to do the same thing.
Yeah, so but let's get in. Let's actually get in there.
All right.
So go ahead and get in there and act as if you're doing this from the command line. So the question is, when you want to run craft, one way you can do it is you can type ./craft.
Right.
All right. So just do that and hit return. Right, so that's one way you can do it. And so the dot and the slash is Unixism for this directory, like run this thing here, okay? And if you don't have that, depending on what you're doing, it may try to look for a global command name craft and try to run that. So that's why you precede it with the ./ there, right? So why does this work? Well, what I want you to do is go back, erase this line, and do ls-al, and don't hit return, and then do pipe, space pipe, grep craft. Grep. Yeah, okay. So this is the thing that we're running. And the reason why this works, the reason why you can do ./craft is you see that little X there?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the executable bit. That means, hey, Unix, you can run this thing if you want to. It's okay. If you got rid of that, if you did like a chmod a-x and then craft, even though nothing has changed with the file, you are not going to be able to execute it. It's just not going to work, right? But the other reason why this works is, can you? I don't know if Nano is going to be installed, but type Nano Craft. See if it's in this container. Vim Craft?
Nope.
All right. Do Cat Craft then. That's fine. All right, and scroll back up to the top so we can see the top of this file. No, just your terminal window. Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's the start of the file right there.
Yep.
This is a little bit of trivia for everybody. We're gonna have Ryan play at home. First of all, do you know what this thing is called here? This little line, you'll see it at the beginning of a whole lot of text files. You'll see this fairly often.
So I call these pound signs because I'm old, but I know people call them hash marks now.
Mm-hmm.
So pound sign, exclamation point, and then a path to something.
Yeah. Do you know what that thing is called?
Well, I know this is shebang.
It's got a name. Yeah. It's called it's not the William Huang or whatever that guy's, William Hung. It's not Shebangs. It's not the song, right? But it is called the Shebang.
Yep.
Do you know who I'm talking about? William Hung?
I do.
He was on American Idol. He sang.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
I actually interviewed that guy, Ryan.
Why?
I'm not even kidding. We'll get into it some other time, but I did. Okay. I interviewed him. I swear to God.
Take this off the live stream. Go ahead.
But this thing is called, this line as a whole is called a shebang or a hash bang. And the reason it's called that is that little character that you call a pound, because as you say you're old, is also a sharp symbol.
Right.
It's also a sharp symbol in music, right?
Yep.
So it's called, so that's where they think the name shebang came from, because it's a combination of sharp, and then the exclamation point is actually a bang. If anyone knows that, but it's actually a bang. And there is a typographic symbol called, it's one of my favorite ones, it's called an interrobang, and it's a combination of a question mark and an exclamation point. That's an interrobang. But anyway, that's trivial. That doesn't really make a difference. So you can call this a hash bang or a shebang or whatever you want to call it. There are lots of different names for it. And what this does is it says, when we tried to execute this file, this is just a text file, right? So how do we know how to run this file? Well, that's what this thing does. This was introduced by, oh God, what was his name? Dennis Ritchie in the 70s. Because he's one of the ones that made Linux and C and
book.
Yeah, exactly. Kernighan and Ritchie
book. Yeah.
K&R. But basically what this does is it tells Unix, okay, I know this is a text file, but here's a path to the interpreter or to the thing that can execute this file.
Okay.
So that's what it exists for. So if you wanted to be evil, you could do something like you could change the line in there that says PHP. You could change that to, I don't know, bash or whatever. And then it's going to pipe all the rest of the file to bash. And it's obviously not going to work.
Right.
You know? Or you could change it to Perl or Python or whatever you want to call it. That weird looking little user bin env thing. So to explain what that is, it's essentially a little program that sets up the environment so that your paths are pointing to the right place. Because when you just type PHP, so type PHP in the command line. Like, go ahead and go down there.
Okay, so PHP.
So when you just type PHP and hit return.
Waiting for something.
Yeah, it's because we give it nothing to execute. My bad.
Right.
But it's running PHP right now is what it's doing. So hit Control C. But how does it know where this PHP lives, right? So type echo space $path. $path uppercase. Yeah. So these are your paths. So it's going to, whenever you type a command, it's going to look in these paths. They're separated by colons.
Here,
here, and to find the thing to run. And what that little env line does is it makes sure that those paths are set correctly. It's all you really need to know about it. So you'll see that fairly often. let's get back to what we're talking about to begin with. What about when I type PHP craft? Like, why would I want to do that instead?
Right.
Yeah, go ahead and type it. It's fine.
Same result, but what's happening behind? Like, is there a difference in what's happening to get to that result?
Yeah, so same result, but what's happening is we're already typing the command PHP. We don't need any shebang. We don't need that at all. And we're saying PHP run this file, right? So it's very explicit. Now, there are two reasons why this is generally preferred that you do it this way. One is that even if the file is not marked as executable, it's still going to work, right? So if for some reason you uploaded the craft file and the execute permissions are not set on it for some reason, typing PHP craft will work. Typing /craft will not work.
Right.
Because in the second case, when we type /craft, we're saying run this command, and Unix says, this says I can't run it, so it won't run it. But when we type PHP craft, we're saying run PHP, we're saying PHP execute this craft file. So that's one reason why you might prefer to use PHP craft when you're running it. The other is on certain Windows shells and certain other environments, the user bin env doesn't exist, so that shebang isn't going to work. But you can just type PHP from the command line and it will work. So as long as your paths are set correctly, which they kind of have to be for much of anything to work on your computer, typing PHP craft is going to be the way to go that will always work. No matter what operating system you're running, no matter whether your permissions are right and all that kind of stuff. And as a bonus, if you're running in something like Forge or other environments that let you have multiple PHP versions for different sites, you're going to need to be explicit about what version of PHP you want to run the thing with anyway. Right. So it would become something like PHP 7.4 space craft. You know, you can be explicit about the version of PHP that ends up running it. But that's kind of a too long. Well, actually, that was the long version. but that's what a shebang is. That's why /craft works and will run it, even though it's just a text file. And it's also why you probably want to use PHP craft. Now, in practice, if you're using Macs and Macs for local dev and Linux for serving, you can use /craft and everything is going to work. But if you have a mixed environment, be friendly to everybody, PHP craft, be done with it. Does that make sense? Awesome. Anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, if you have a question about that or anything else related to web development, I must qualify.
You learned a shebang, you learned an interrobang, you know?
Yeah, I dropped a link to interrobang. I didn't know what interrobang was, actually. Or I mean, I know the thing, I just didn't know it had a name.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm a living, walking interrobang.
Well, you have like a background in typography, right? So it's not like.
No, that's stretching it. But I mean,
what did you do? What did you do on early Macs and stuff with typography?
I got my start, making money on the internet designing typefaces. That is true. But I was just a kid sitting in his room making something I thought looked good, like calling it I guess it's typography, but it's kind of like making a hand turkey. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, your wife is a very talented designer, so I'm sure she tells you where you're wrong now when it comes to that stuff, right?
Yeah, that's never a problem.
All right. Awesome.
Hey, Ryan, did I ever show you the picture of the fish my dad caught?
No, you didn't, but we'll say that for another time.
Okay.
That's really helpful. I didn't know the difference between the two. So hopefully that helps everyone. And that came up at some point in the conversation. So Andrea, I don't know if you were the one that brought that up, but hopefully that's helpful to everyone. I'm just going to drop in.
But the too long didn't read is use PHP craft. And that is a universal.
It'll always
more
work.
likely to work everywhere. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see. So let's go into another question. We're doing good. I feel like we're gonna just nail it here on the time today too. Maybe it's the new time. It's a whole different thing.
I mean, I'm drinking coffee now instead of liquor, which is kind of bothering me. But other than that, everything's okay.
Andrew doesn't talk as much during the afternoon live streams.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm less likely to go off on a rant without my rum.
All right, here's a question. Ooh, wow. Craft 2. So import plugin. So I'm using the import plugin by Bob Oldahampsink on localhost Craft 2 site. And it appears to have installed successfully, but when I attempted to upload a CSV file and click on next, I've met with a blank screen. So I'm not really here to like help people troubleshoot Craft 2, although up until recently I was responsible for working with some Craft 2 sites, and there's lots of them out there. But I think it's interesting here. I want to talk about import, but also the risks of relying on older software, especially plugins, and then also like the blank screen. So Andrew, like when someone says, I got a blank screen, what would be your, and also like debugging, like there's so many things you can unpack from this one question, which is why I chose it. If someone said like, if they told you this and said, I got a blank screen, what would be your first like debugging step you would give them?
Turn on dev mode.
Yeah.
It's very likely that if you're seeing just a blank screen with, and so first of all, I agree with you. Like, I'm not even sure I remember much of anything about Craft 2. I'm saying that not to belittle the questioner, but to make it clear that my answers are suspect. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of times a blank screen might come up in cases where if you have dev mode on, that you would actually see some useful information. The other thing I would do is, and this is in another article I wrote on log files, different one than the custom logger, is I would go into your storage logs directory and I would delete all of the logs, and then I would make the problem happen. Yep. And then I would open up the logs and look for useful information in there.
Yeah, and if your localhost setup works in this way and you're comfortable doing it, you can also tail that log file too. So if you go into storage, oops, I guess I have to cd storage logs. What is it called now? Web log, PHP errors. I'll probably actually do PHP errors. So you can just do tail -f to follow it, and then you'll get the errors there. Blank page, I'm not going to guarantee it, but and I'm not going to wager against you, Andrew Welch, because I've seen fanned out cache from you before. I would guess that this is, and because he's local hosting or she is local hosting, that this is a PHP incompatibility issue, a PHP version incompatibility issue that is causing this to happen. Almost
so
guaranteed.
Carolyn in our chat, or Caroline, I'm sorry, says that she thinks it's an out of memory issue. So it's something that she's run into. So, and it's just very similar to what you're talking about.
Because the CSV file might be too big, right?
Maybe. I don't know. But she says she's run into it a lot.
That's a good catch. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Could be something to look at. And that will be in your log file too, right? So that will be in one of the logs. There'll be an error dumped in there if that ends up being the problem too.
Yep. So it's a good start to troubleshooting, and that's how I would answer this person is like, here's some troubleshooting tips, because it's hard to know until you get error messages. Don't guess.
Yeah.
But also,
I got it in my head now, Ryan, though. I got it in my head. Jimmy Buffett, Sweet Caroline. Like, I'm going to try to not bust out singing it. Oh, it's one of those earworm songs, though. Killing me.
Okay, here, I'll just, I'll play this and we'll just hit the reset button on you. This is how we reset Andrew. There we go. Okay. So
I'm back.
Another thing I would do is, if you can't get this fixed, and I would say that the import plugin by Bob, like, that's been unsupported for years. Like, I think even when Craft 2 was still active, he deprecated that whole thing and made it unsupported. I'm pretty sure. So I would look to see if you do need to continue to import data into Craft 2 and you can't get it to work, if there's another solution. I was trying to find if FeedMe still supported Craft 2, but I couldn't find anything on that. So, but and it, if Buck1112, who's the poster here, if it's possible to update this site to Craft 3, I would do that. It's not as hard as you think. It's really all about like whoever the original developer was and the decisions they made on the plugins that they're using. Really is the biggest thing. Look at the import plugin. It's not terribly difficult to update the craft. You're gonna get my stream pulled with your copyright violations. The craft documentation has good migrate from 2 to 3 docs still, so check that out. But Caroline, I think, is probably going to be the winner on this for PHP.
And it's Neil Diamond. What am I thinking? It's not Jimmy Buffett. It's Neil Diamond.
Oh, Neil Diamond. That wasn't even close. And Caroline said that she had entirely too much experience. So there we go. Justin asked, does Bob maintain any Craft 3 plugins? I actually don't know. Is Bob still actively working in the plugin community? Yes. Okay.
I don't know about the plugin community. I know he's actively working in the Craft community. I think he is, actually. I think he is. I know he is in the Craft community. Plugin community. I think so. I think it might be under a name, though. It might be under a company name.
Got it. Awesome.
He's gone corporate on us. Do you know anyone like that?
What's that?
Do we know anyone who's gone corporate, sold their soul?
Nope. Don't know anyone. Don't know anyone that's now doing middle of the day live streams either. So I have one more question on the docket, Andrew, and then we'll be like right at like around an hour. I think it's pretty good.
Beautiful. Yep. Beautiful.
All right. So next, last one. And if anyone else has a question you'd like us to answer, you can drop it in the chat. Thanks for everyone for joining. We have a good audience today. I think our new time is more conducive to slacking off and hanging out with us rather than doing your work. So that's cool.
So if I could real quick, Ryan. So Scott Mortimer in the chat said he would love to see our approaches to CSS and JavaScript in plugin development. You want to do it on the next stream?
Yeah, let's do it on the next stream.
Yeah, like I pointed him to my repo, but just a quick demo of the way I've got everything set up and working might be something useful to look at.
Let's write it on a note card. And
sounds good.
And put it. I have to start writing.
I'd be more than happy to demo the way that I develop JavaScript and CSS inside of Craft while doing plugin development.
All right.
Oh, so you know what I can do? I can show off Image Optimize, that cool little image sizer thing that I'm working on. I can use that to show it off. That'd be perfect.
Let's do it.
All right.
Scott says
we'll
he'd love
it.
it.
So next,
we'll work on that.
We'll go through it, and so
the next time, which would be
so
the
2 weeks
14th,
from today.
18th. Yep. No.
Yeah.
Right?
So 2 weeks from today, on the 18th, you said?
I think so. Is that right? 14 days. Yeah.
Sounds right. We will do it.
All right.
Make sure you're there, Scott. Otherwise, I guess you can always watch it.
Counting on you to be there.
All
right. Last question from Stack Exchange. And just so everyone knows, if we have good answers or questions, I always go back and submit these to the people. So we're trying to be helpful, not just talk about their questions on the live stream. This person said the custom aliases are not working. They followed the instructions in the doc, couldn't get it to work. There was an answer from Ali that was helpful for how to set up a custom alias in the global setting. But I actually, since this is answered, I wanted to talk about aliases versus environment variables, when to use which, and why they're better, and or which one is better in certain situations, and why I would, like, when would I set something as an environment variable versus creating an alias? How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So he mentioned that aliases, the config settings, but something with aliases have been deprecated. What's been deprecated with aliases?
No, nothing with aliases has been deprecated.
Okay.
The only thing that's been deprecated is the site URL, which was a general config setting. So it was an actual like key in the general config object that's sitting there that you could set that to something. That's the only thing that's been deprecated. You should just, you know what, next time I'm just not even going to show up on the stream, and I'm just going to give you a bunch of article links. So I wrote an article on this, right? called a flat multi-environment config. And
Okay.
I updated it for Craft 3.6, and Brandon even tweeted at it and said this is a timely update because they're moving the scaffolding to a flat environmental config. So what does that mean? So bring that question back up on the screen.
Yep.
So a non-flat environment, scroll down to Ollie's answer. So this is a non-flat environment. And what this means, the reason it's not flat, is you can see we've got the principal keys of asterisk, which is everything, and then dev, which is if the local environment is dev, staging, and production, right? So you can see there's a hierarchy, right? The way a flat config works is you don't have any of these. You don't have dev, staging, or production. You just have it pulling out settings from end files, and the end file is what is different on each environment, if that makes sense. And the article will go into it in more detail, so you can take a look at a real world example. But basically, let's get back to the difference between aliases and environment variables. Mm-hmm. Environment variables come from a .env file. And the idea behind that is that you never check the .env file into your source code control. You manually set it up.
Environment specific, right? So
yeah. Yep. And you manually set it up, or there are a lot of tools like Served and Forge or whatever that you can just edit the .env file from there for your production server or whatever. But the idea is that this is the one thing that's going to be different per environment. So you don't put everything in here. But what you do put in here are two things. Things that are going to vary from environment to environment. It might be like the connection to the database. It might be the URL that you access the site at. And the second thing that you'll put in the .env file are secrets. So things like the security key that Ryan has up there, or if you had any other AWS private keys or whatever, that kind of thing. You can put that in there. So environment. And
you get, just real quick, Andrew, you get a lot of prompts in the Craft control panel for settings that should be set by environment variables. There's this little like micro like copy, like helper text that says, you can set this as an environment variable, probably better.
Yeah. But that's where environmental variables come from. That's what they are. Aliases are actually a ye-ism, but they are not deprecated. They are not going away. Craft makes wide use of this in its own code base. And the advantage of aliases over, and what I actually do in my setup is I set aliases from environment variables. So let's say I've got a environment variable called site URL, right? Okay. I might create an alias called @site URL. And the real advantage that you're going to get from that is you can then use it for partial paths. So environment variables are, it's one piece of data. So you couldn't do like $site_URL/home. That will not work. But you can use an alias. You could do @site URL/home. So for anything that is a path or a URL, you would use an alias for it. For anything that is just a singular value, you can just use an environmental variable for it. Does that make sense?
Right, because so if I needed to, so like an alias, if I needed to like append something to it, I would use an alias. Environment variables are just like a connection key for, let's see, like for mail sending or something like that.
Yeah. Step number 1 is to put everything that's different per environment in your .env file, and secrets in your .env file. Step number 2 is to create aliases for anything that is a path or a URL, and make that alias from your environment variables, and you're good. You're good to go.
Cool. That's helpful.
But what I would do
that seems like an article material, just like the difference. I need to.
It's in the article, man.
Oh, it's in the article. And you know, Matt is so good at the docs that especially they have, what do they call the guides? Sometimes they'll have a guide. So I'll look it up. I'll drop some links into your article, and if anything, I find in the documentation as well on that. Excellent. All right. Wow. It's like a real productive.
You're not free.
Live stream. What was that?
Not free. You're not free, mister. Stay right there in your seat. Do not move.
Kind of creeping up on my lunch.
Matthew Loyal is saying that the live embedded chat is working on CraftQuest, but he can't get it working on his site.
Yeah,
you are the official maintainer. You're the official maintainer of this plugin. So what is going wrong with it, Ryan?
So as the official maintainer, who kind of like the cleanup crew having to fix issues. So Matthew, I will follow up here. I didn't get to trying to address this before the live stream, and I actually made the live stream go live and was kind of crossing my fingers that the chat worked, and it did. So when you let's see, what am I using to? So I read that YouTube is supposedly like phasing out in February or in January the use of the chat, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of where this all works. So there's this thing where you have to add the chat. Let's see, live chat here, where you're adding, when you view the source, check that your embed domain is populated, because that's required. That was the one change that broke it a while back, where I had to add in the embed domain. And the embed domain we get, I don't remember what we get it, Andrew. We kind of have some checks for like site URL and things like that.
I don't remember anything.
Yeah. But let me follow up with your ticket. I hadn't had a chance to look at it yet, Matthew, but maybe, I mean, if it works for me, it should work for you, because I'm not running a different version of this. I'm pulling it from Composer just like you are.
Wasn't there something where you have to have a certain number of followers before you can use embed too?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is why I abandoned it.
Yeah. So YouTube embed chat follower. Is it embed? It's not the chat, it's the videos too, right?
I don't know. It's been a while since I looked at it. I just remember that there was some kind of a restriction that you had to have a certain number of followers or something like that.
Yeah.
And you had to get approval for monetary something or other too, which I don't know.
Yeah, I think you had to be approved for monetization or something, and it requires, there's a threshold for the number of subscribers you have. And it used to be lower, and now it's higher.
Yep.
And then you took your toys and you went home because you didn't have enough subscribers. So
well, okay. I was realistic about the fact that I was not going to be streaming enough, and I wasn't nearly as charismatic as you, so I wasn't going to be able to build up my audience. So I just said, I'll just hitch my ride to Ryan. Let him do the heavy lifting.
Vice versa. All right. So just so everyone knows, if you want to re-watch this live stream, if you tuned in late, or if for some reason you had to leave early, but you wouldn't be hearing this. So The live streams are all posted on CraftQuest on the site, and the whole live stream is now available for everyone to watch. If you have a free CraftQuest account, you can watch the entire live stream. And then occasionally I'll slice out pieces of the live stream and make those available to members. I do encourage you, if you're not a member, to join. CraftQuest, as Andrew was alluding to, CraftQuest is the thing I do. This is it. So the membership supports me directly, allows us to do the live stream, allows me to produce all the videos. So I'd appreciate if that's something that you're able to do and interested in. Check out craftquest.io/join for the different plans. There are team plans coming. I know I've been talking about that forever. Ben Croker's tired of hearing me talk about how I'm not working on it yet.
I don't
but
believe
check that
you
out.
anymore.
And if you want to have a question answered on the live stream, go to craftquest.io/on-call. And there's that form I showed at the beginning of the live stream. That's a great way to get in touch with us, in addition to dropping anything in the chat during the live stream, which we monitor as well. So that's it for this time. Andrew, my friend, thanks for joining me. Thanks for looking so nice with all the new lighting work that you've been doing in your barn. Appreciate that.
Yeah, still doesn't help the way I look, but at least the lighting's better.
All right, everyone. Have a great day, great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time on the live stream. Take care.
Bye-bye.